Today on All Sports Central, we'll be going over our first NFL prediction of this 2020 offseason, and it will be over the Kansas City Chiefs, and this is a team that obviously won the Super Bowl last season. All around, just a great season for Kansas City, but how will they be in 2020 is what we're going over here today. We're going to be going over your returning production for this Kansas City team, as well as a full schedule prediction. We're going to be going over every game on Kansas City's schedule going into 2020 and what I expect out of them. So yeah, with that, let's look at your season trends from 2019 for Kansas City. Obviously, they were 5-3 between September and October, and yeah, they weren't very good for the first couple months of the season. Obviously, I mean, they were a good team, but they just weren't great by any means. And of course, they really started to pick it up once they got this November and the postseason all around. Just a great team throughout the last couple months of the regular season. They were 10-1. They only took one loss between the final 3 months of the season, and their overall record was 15-4. They were 12-4 in the regular season, so they didn't have the best record. Obviously, the Ravens had the best record in the AFC last season with a 14-2. But once again, all around great season for the Kansas City Chiefs, and especially between November and December, this team was one of the best in the nation, no doubt. Some of their key wins from last season, they obviously beat the Baltimore Ravens on the 22nd of September. They won that one 33-28. That was obviously a huge game. They also had a big win against the Patriots on the road, 23-16. They beat Houston 51-31 at home. That was their first playoff game. They also beat Tennessee in the AFC Championship. Obviously, the Titans were a red-hot team at that point in the season, so that was a very good win, 35-24. And then obviously the Super Bowl matchup between the 49ers and this team, the Chiefs ended up winning it 31-20, and I'm sure that's a game that many Chiefs fans will remember for a very long time. I mean, and rightfully so. That was a great game, and overall for the Chiefs, still a great season for many, many reasons, no doubt. On to returning production for next season. They returned Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, obviously, and he was quite honestly probably the best quarterback in the entire NFL last season. He had over 4,000 yards, along with 26 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. His completion percentage was pretty good too, right around at 66%. So once again, still one of the best quarterbacks in the league last season. They also bring in running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire from LSU. He was their first round draft pick, I believe. And they also have their 2019 running back 1, Damian Williams. So this running back core is looking really good heading into 2020. If both of those running backs can stay healthy, I think this running back core could be one of the best in the nation next season. I mean, Damian Williams all by himself had a pretty good season. He had over 700 yards with 7 touchdowns, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire from LSU, one of the best running backs in the SEC, and you could also say in the nation in general. So yeah, the running back core looks really good for Kansas City. They did release the running back 2 from last season, LaShawn McCoy. Obviously, he's been kind of a downer over the past couple of seasons. He had a big fumbling problem last season, so yeah, I mean, rightfully so. You bring in a good running back with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and he's much, much younger than LaShawn McCoy as well. So overall, in the end, this running back core is looking pretty good. They also returned their leading receiver from last season and their star tight end, Travis Kelce. So yeah, he had over 1,200 yards with 6 touchdowns last season too. So he was a big-time tight end for the nation in general. They also returned the top receiver in Tyreek Hill, which he had just over 800 yards and 7 touchdowns last season. They also returned their second and third wide receivers, Sammy Watkins and Mecole Hardman. Now, obviously, Mecole Hardman being a very young wide receiver, he had a great season last year with 555 yards with 6 touchdowns. And Sammy Watkins, he was very good as well. So, no doubt that this receiving core will be one of the best in the nation going into 2020 as well. They also returned their 4th wide receiver, Demarcus Robinson. Can't forget about him. And their only loss as far as both sides of the football go, you also got, obviously, LaShawn McCoy. But on the defense, their cornerback, Kendall Fuller, he is now with the Washington Redskins. He is no longer with Kansas City, and he will not be with this team next season. So all around, they're returning basically both sides of the ball. This Kansas City Chiefs team definitely should make a big run for the Super Bowl again next season. When you got all the talent basically returning and everyone's just one more year experience, I think the Chiefs definitely are going to be a big contender for the Super Bowl next season. Moving on to your schedule for next season, you start off the season on September 10th against the Texans, and I believe that's the season kickoff too. That's the first game of the 2020 regular season. You got the Los Angeles Chargers on the 20th, followed by the Baltimore Ravens on the 28th. So your September is looking really tough. The Chargers, obviously, I don't expect a whole lot out of, but with it being a road game, you got to go kind of across the nation there, and that could be a tough one there. And then you got the Ravens on the next week. Ravens will be a big game there. So, yeah, definitely for the Chiefs, could be a difficult September. But your October, it looks a little bit better at least. You got the Patriots at home, and I don't really expect much out of New England. You got the Raiders also on the 11th. You got the Bills and the Broncos then to finish off October. As far as your November goes, you start off the season with the Jets at home, followed by the Panthers, Raiders, and then Buccaneers. That's going to be a big one there. The Buccaneers and the Chiefs, obviously with Tom Brady now being with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah, that's going to be a big one there for both sides, or for both teams in general. In December, you got the Broncos to start it off, followed by a trip to Miami to play the Dolphins. Then you got to go to a really tough road game against the Saints, and then you finish off the regular season with the Falcons and the Chargers. So, yeah, here's what I'm expecting out of your first half of your season. I think that you knock off the Texans and the Chargers pretty easily. And as much as I know probably the Chiefs fans want to win against the Ravens in that road game, I just don't think it happens. I mean, after having a pretty tough road game against the Chargers, obviously having to take a big road trip for that, you're going to have to turn right around and play the Ravens the next week. I just don't think it's going to happen. And especially with the Ravens and Lamar Jackson and all around, I mean, that Ravens team does not have a very difficult schedule. So I think that the Ravens will look really good heading into that game. As far as your October goes, you got the Patriots at home. You're going to get a win there. You also got to win against the Raiders and the Bills. And that Bills game is going to be tough. Obviously, the Bills next season, I do expect to be one of the best in the AFC. And it would not surprise me a single bit to see them win their division. But yeah, I think Kansas City gets a win there against the Bills as well. Then you take a loss against the Denver Broncos on the 25th. And obviously, I mean, you guys probably don't think it seems logical that you guys beat the Bills one week, then the next week you lose to the Broncos. But if you hear me out here, of course, the Bills being a great team, I think that a lot of preparations obviously going to go into that game. And I think the Broncos are going to be a very sneaky team next season. I think that they could pull some pretty big upsets throughout the year. I don't expect anything big out of them, but I do expect the Broncos to be a very improved team this next season. So I think that Broncos game is going to be tough. I think that the Broncos get the win there in the end. But once again, I mean, those losses are bound to happen for any team. I think you start off November with a win, too, against the Jets. And then as far as the second half of your season goes, I think that you get a win against the Panthers and the Raiders. Obviously, I mean, you got a bye week between those games, too. So that's kind of good that you get a bye week in one of the most ideal parts of the season. Then you get the Buccaneers on the 29th. That's going to be a road game. And I just think with, of course, Tom Brady and that team looking really good heading into 2020. I mean, they've got a ton of talent on the Buccaneers team. And I don't expect them to win the Super Bowl next season, but I do expect it to be a pretty good season all around for the Buccaneers. I think that the Chiefs going into that game, I mean, you got a couple of really good wins coming into there. But I think having to have a quick turnaround from going to Las Vegas and having to go all the way to Florida, I just think it's going to, well, obviously it's going to be a short week, but I just think it's going to be a tough one there in Tampa Bay either way. So I think that the Buccaneers get the win there. You got the Broncos and the Dolphins on the first couple weeks of December. And then you got the Saints. And that Saints game I went back and forth on several times, but I think the Saints get the win there in the end. I think the Saints are going to be a great team once again next season. And with Drew Brees, he's going to be super motivated next season, I think. Even if the Saints go all the way, I'd say, to the NFC Championship, I think that Drew Brees, this could be his final season. So he's going to be very motivated. I think he's going to lead his team to a big win there against the Chiefs on December 20th. On the 27th, you get the Falcons at home. I think you get a win there. And I also think you get a win against the Chargers at home on the 3rd. So, yeah, your record estimation or your record prediction for your regular season will be 12-4. I think the Chiefs will be just as good or even better next season as in comparison to how they were in 2019. So, yeah, I do expect them to make a pretty deep playoff run as well. So, watch out for that, especially. As far as your prediction stats go, they're going to be 8-0 at home, so I do expect them to be undefeated at home next season, and then they're going to be 4-4 on the road. So your 4 losses next season, I do expect to be on the road. I mean, you got a lot of tough road games on here. Between the Ravens, Buccaneers, and Saints alone, those will be 3 very tough games, 3 of your toughest games having to be on the road. And then that Broncos game obviously is going to be a tough one as well. And that Bills game, can't forget about that. So yeah, most of your tough ones are going to be on the road next season, so you got to be aware of that. But yeah, as far as the division goes, I think you'll be 5-1 between the division. Your only loss in the division is going to be against the Denver Broncos, obviously being on the road. And against the AFC in general, you will be 10-2. So yeah, with that about wraps up our final prediction on the Kansas City Chiefs. If you enjoyed this preview, be sure to slap a like on it, subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel, and I'd really appreciate that a ton. But yeah, once again, thank you guys all for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for more predictions and previews from All Sports Central, and I will see you all later.